Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Welcome to the Long Road. My name is Kris Roberts, and before I got here, I saw a thing that there's a protest going on in Boston where they're saying, black protesters are saying that the city of Boston owes its black residents $15 billion in reparations. California had a study, and then when they looked at how much reparations they would have to pay out, they kind of put it on a back burner. There's a couple other cities around the country that are giving reparations to their black citizens. But it's kind of reparations. Yes, we had a long period of slavery, about 250 years, almost 250 years of slavery in the, that's what people talk about, the first slaves that came to Virginia, the British colony, but they forget that the Spanish also owned what is now Florida and parts of Georgia. And they had slaves much earlier than the British colonies. One of the big things when we talk about reparations, yes, put it bluntly, there was a number of times that politicians who just looked the other way to get bills passed. President Roosevelt wanted his Social Security Act passed. But when they passed the Social Security Act, they left farmers and domestic workers out of the Social Security. So that meant most blacks down in the South would never ever qualify for Social Security. Then when it came to the GI Bill, to get the GI Bill passed, they set it up basically that it was almost impossible for returning black soldiers to take advantage of the GI Bill. Then when they added on to the GI Bill so you could have housing loans for the GIs, the VA set it up with the redlining districts and everything that it was almost, again, impossible for black service members to get GI VA housing loans. So that meant that a lot of people could not generate wealth. The biggest factor in generating wealth is owning your own home. And basically the blacks were basically screwed over for political reasons, and they were not able to buy houses, to get educated, the things that are important in wealth. But again, then when you had Brown versus the Board of Education, which ended the separate but equal and made sure, stated that schools would be no longer segregated, they would be integrated. So what happened down south? They basically went to all the all-black schools and fired the principals, the administrators, and the teachers, and in turn put white teachers in their place. It did not necessarily improve the quality of their school. Yes, there was some integration, but the integration was not based on money. It was basically money. It was based on class. So poor white kids were integrated with poor black kids. But the quality of the education dropped drastically because basically the historic black colleges, at one time there was way over 100, were producing high quality teachers, skilled craftsmen, and all that other thing. And so the quality of education, while integrated, didn't move up to the higher level, it moved down. So again, so all of a sudden you had an educated group of black, basically they were community leaders and everything, found themselves out of a job, no pension, no nothing, and a lot of them moved north and took jobs below their education level and their experience level. And so I just kind of really wonder who, if we had, hypothetically, and we were going to give reparations to blacks, who gets the money? Who does? If I come in from Africa 10 years ago, do I rate reparations? How far do you have to prove that you were affected? Yes. Basically, if you were black down in the South, you were pretty much affected financially. If you went to cities like New York City, Boston, Chicago, for the longest time, the unions would not let blacks in. A lot of the communities would not let blacks hold jobs and all that other kind of stuff. But since they had the Black Lives Matters, there'd been more and more of a push for reparations, and I went and, for example, took a couple of DNA tests, and when I took the DNA test, it was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. My father is really, really dark, and I'm going, so I expected to have a 50-50, but I wasn't close to having a 50-50. And so as I went back, and I go, oh, so I was able to find out who is my third great-grandfather. And I'm going, wow, he was in Kentucky, he was born in Virginia. And then I go track and everything, and it goes, oh, my great-great-great-grandfather, as I kept looking, it says slave owner. And what happened looks like his wife, my great-great-great-grandmother, was a slave, and he moved from Virginia to Kentucky, where at that time it wasn't much of a problem for black and white marriages or relations or whatever. So I go and say, would I rate reparations, and would all my kids, would my grandkids all rate reparations, because I can prove that my great-great-grandmother was a slave and I know who owned her. But without that relationship, I wouldn't be here. To me, the greatest form of reparations that America can give blacks today is a high quality education. Not this crappy education like in Baltimore, as I said on an earlier show, where only a couple of kids graduate reading at a 12th grade level. Not like Memphis, Tennessee, when the valedictorian couldn't even read at an 8th grade level and couldn't get into college. No, a quality education. Not this inner city crap, okay, where basically this is like in a daycare and we're not educating. Maybe the Americans, you need to have fund some more money to the historic black colleges to teach more students, to become teachers and better. And maybe we need to put more quality black educators in these black areas and get better results. Because Brown versus the Board of Education did away with separate but equal and said they were supposed to be integrated. Go to a big city, nothing is integrated. You got brown and black people in the school. Some of the schools you have Asians, but you'll find very few white people in the inner city schools because they're crappy and no one wants to send their kid to an inner city school. And if they got money, they're not putting their kids in school. That's just like here in Keene. Yes, you got free education at the Keene High, but some parents have said, no, I'm not satisfied with a Keene High education, so I'm going to pay money and give them to Mercy Academy, or I'm going to send them to a charter school. And so parents want a quality education. They know a person's future is based on their education. If you don't have education, you don't make money. Plain and simple. If you don't make money, you don't have education, you don't have a good job, you don't make money, bingo, you can't buy a house. So when people go, look at all these people on welfare, look at all these people on assistance. You know what? It would be a heck of a lot cheaper and more beneficial for the country to educate a quality education. A quality education means graduating from high school at grade level. That would make a big difference in the black community. But you know what? That should be the same goal for every community. It's the goal and the outcome in most private schools, and your future should not be depending on how much money your parents or your grandparents have. And it just got me going because, hey, if I gave everybody $50,000 in reparations, how many people are going to invest it wisely? How many scam artists are going to come in and just find a way to suck the money? You know, there's a market next to my house. I haven't seen the guy in a while. I could always know when he got his Social Security check because he would go in there and get 5 $20 scratch tickets, hoping to win. And when you look at it, he had a 51% chance of winning his money back. Not winning over above, but winning his money back. Because a few years ago when I checked, state of New Hampshire had one of the lowest on the scratch cards, and they paid back about 52 cents on a dollar. You can go to some places in Las Vegas and say, hey, Lucky Slots, we pay 95% back. So if you had $1,000 worth of quarters and you put them in the slot machine and you play for 12 hours, if everything comes out in your favor, you can leave with $950. But the guy next to you doing the same thing wins $1,000. That doesn't come from the house. That comes from you, because the casino is taking 5% off the top. Every dollar you put in, 5 cents goes to the casino, and the other 95% will be split among the other players, no different than lottery tickets. So you go to a lot of supermarkets, small stores, gas stations, Cumberland Farms. You can just find out when a lot of people getting a Social Security check, Social Security disability check, because it usually comes in on a Tuesday or Wednesday. People are split based on their Social Security number. Also, one of the big things that's in the news today, getting bigger and bigger, is Ukraine. The Ukraine, they lost a couple of positions, and the president of Ukraine, who basically under martial law has did away with the elections until he deems it safe to have elections, and replaced a popular and well-experienced basically chairman of the Joint Chief or commanding general. And since they replaced him in about 2 weeks, they've been a couple of disasters. The one that happened the other day was basically turned into a rout. Some of them just threw down their arms, they left. Other ones were captured, some got away. And President Biden stated the other day that it's our fault. It's America's fault that what's happening in Ukraine is because Congress has not approved $60 billion more to give to Ukraine. The last look, we've had about $46 billion that we've given to Ukraine, about $10 billion more than the Europe Union has. And Europe just approved like $56 billion over the next 3 years. And the United States wants to go give $60 billion, President. Okay. But something's going on here. And we spend about $800 billion for the United States Department of Defense. $800 billion. And we got Navy ships that can't deploy. We have aircraft that are only about 40% mission capable because they're down. These are multi-million-dollar aircraft, and one of the most effective aircraft and one of the most, it's up most of the time, is the B-52, and the B-52 was flying before I went to elementary school. The B-52 was flying during Vietnam. Okay, go think. So 73, that's 27, 50 years ago, the B-52 was flying, and they haven't been making any. They've been stealing parts for others and doing upgrade. Well, the military doesn't really come out and say anything unless they get the approval. Well, February 19th at 11 a.m., this was put online. Army officials told CNN it's at risk of running out of funds. The U.S. Army said it could be running out of funds to protect Europe and Africa without Ukraine's aid package. Okay. What does the Ukraine's aid package have to do with the United States Army ability to function in Europe and Africa? A spokesman for the U.S. Army said it's important we receive money now. The impact would be our ability to train with allied partners and our ability to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. That doesn't mean these individual companies in NATO at large can't do things, but from a U.S. perspective and the U.S. Army's perspective, that comes to an end. So the Army spokesman is saying NATO can do all this stuff, but we no longer have money to take care of the eastern flank to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. Well, the money to reinforce NATO's eastern flank should have already been in the budget. Okay? When we're talking about $60 billion, basically $95 billion total with money going to Egypt and Taiwan, that's $95 billion that wasn't in the budget. It's $95 billion that we don't have. That's $95 billion that has to be borrowed and interest to be paid on. That's how Congress and the president works. They snooker us. What they're looking right here, this should have been in the budget. It is just like during Iraq and Afghanistan, they had a separate military contingent fund. Hundreds of billions of dollars that they put over here. Because they're saying is, we're paying $750 billion for the military, but the military can't go to war. Will not allow the military to go to war. Guy goes, but if there's no money, there's no ability for us to back up words. Words are great, but actions speak louder. Secretary of the Army, who decides where most of the money budget is allocated, echoed those concerns in an interview with CNN. Every incremental dollar I have is very important where I put that dollar. And I'm constantly choosing between, do we put it in barracks? Do we put it in enlisted incentives? Do we put it in exercises? Do I put it in modernization? I don't have spare cash to be sort of donating some of that. All the things that she listed were supposed to be in the budget that Department of Defense presented to Congress for Congress to approve. And she's saying right now, do I put it in barracks, enlisted in sentence, exercise, and modernization? She says right now, just doing that, she is $2 billion short. So that kind of means they knew what it was going to be, so they lowballed it to get the budget passed, and they knew they were going to come back. No different than Congress never budgets for natural disasters and always comes back for a supplemental budget if we have hurricanes and things like that. But again, $2 billion for there. She don't have money there. She doesn't have money for Europe and Africa. A second. The lack of government funding matters. It isn't secured soon. The Army will run out of funds by the end of May, leaving Europe and Africa with no budget for training and maintenance. If we don't get a Ukraine supplemental package, if the government shuts down, we get nothing else. We'll run out of operations and maintenance fund in May. And it's kind of like the people are leading us are supposed to be some of the most intelligent and the best people. Yep, and a U.S. Army official has warned that it could run out of money for essential international global operations if the government fails to provide further funding for Ukraine. The unnamed official told CNN that the Army is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to support Ukraine, including funds that were initially intended to be used as part of Europe and Africa Command. Wait, kind of, who gives the Army the authority to send money that was budgeted for United States operations and stuff to pay for things in Ukraine? And so what it looks like, the Army is going, hey, what we'll do is maybe we don't have the approval to spend this money. Congress has not spent this money. But you know what? We know that Congress is going to do it. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of take a loan from ourselves. So we'll take money from Africa operations. We'll take money for Europe operations. We'll take money from, you know what, we're short about 45,000 people over the last 3 years. Can't make enlistment quotas. We can't do this. We can't do that. But it doesn't worry about it. Once the money is approved for Ukraine, we will quietly take that money back, and people would never know the difference. Well, the Army was expecting the money to be approved before in around the November timeframe, maybe possibly December. So what's happening is they've been spending all this money and it isn't being replaced. So what is going to happen if it's never replaced? What is the Army going to do? It looks like a Secretary of Defense who disappeared for a week and didn't bother telling anybody. You know what? That's usually AWOL. And if you're an officer, he was a 3-star general, you're going to a special court-martial. Then he's sick again. But this time he went and told people, hey, yep, I'm out of here. I'm sick. I won't be back for a little while. Okay? Secretary of the Army who decides where all the money goes. So the Secretary of the Army made a decision that she was going to use a lot of her department's funds to help pay for things in Ukraine, and it didn't work out too well right now. Okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but one thing in politics and business, a lot of politicians in D.C. are basically, in the polite term, ladies of the night. They sell their services to the people that pay the most. Big business, corporations and stuff pay the most. Okay, if I'm a big corporation like Amazon, I may donate to Republicans, I may donate to Democrats because I want to play both hands. So when you look at the part with Ukraine, well, Russia is not going to conquer Europe. Russia doesn't have the ability to defeat NATO. Okay? Ukraine, yes, Russia attacked a sovereign country. Well, because we, the United States, broke a deal with Gorbachev that would give that buffer zone between NATO and Russia. And so I look at why are billions and millions of migrants coming to the United States. And I'm going, what is the benefit for us dumping so much money and everything into Ukraine? What is the benefit for us letting millions of migrants? Because if we let millions of migrants in and they're not working and we're taking care of them and everything, that's billions and billions of dollars in cost. Ukraine. So if Congress agrees with the president, then it would go, that's over $100 billion to Ukraine. And if Congress says, if you agree for us to hire more people, more judges and things like that to slow the intake on the border, we'll agree to give Ukraine, Israel the money. Then the president says, no, you give me the Ukraine money and you give me the authority and I will stop migration just like that. Well, the president has that authority to do that. But I came across with a good article in Time magazine. Supporting Ukraine is not just an act of charity, it is in our own self-interest. Oh, so it's in our self-interest security-wise? Well, when President Trump was president, he complained that NATO for years and years and years, even up until recently, was a free ride. They were investing their money into businesses and everything, like Germany became highly efficient and all that kind of stuff, while the United States had soldiers and bases airmen over in Europe. Okay, so NATO agreed to spend at least 2% of their budgets of gross national gross domestic product. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, only 2 European countries spend more than 2% of their GDP on defense. Now, 11 NATO members spend more than 2% of their GDP on defense. And some members, as Poland, spending even more than the United States as a percentage of GDP. Okay, this is again where you got another one, and you have to be careful how to look in it and just don't glance over. At least 6 European countries increased their defense spending by over 10% last year. So, 10%. But which countries did 10%? Which country? So, if I was spending 2.5% of my gross domestic product on defense, and I went up 10%, that's a marked difference. If I was paying 1.1% of my gross domestic product, and then I went up 10%, I'm still not paying my share. I'm still not covering my cost. And so they messed around. Oh, yeah, went up 10%. 6 countries, at least 6 countries went up 10%. We came pretty close to that in our budget this year. Okay. Elsewhere, we have shown that Russia's productive economy is exploding under the weight of economic sanctions and historic corporation withdrawal of 1,000+ companies, as well as Putin's cannibalization for the war effort. While Putin has concealed most of its required national income statistics to the International Monetary Fund, through triangular research, we found that several economic sectors have collapsed up to 90%. Foreign direct investment in Russia is going from $100 billion a year to 0. Okay. When it goes, we previously found 7 Russian economic sectors have collapsed up to 90%. What sector? How valuable is that sector? How important is that sector? And again, okay, it's going from $100 billion a year to 0. Well, Russia and China are working on a pipeline. So if China is helping to build that pipeline so they can get gas from Russia, you know what? That's direct foreign investment. Over 2/3 of Russian exports are energy, and energy profits have been sliced in half with a virtual inability to sell its gas to any country and oil at break-even prices. Okay, we sold oil overseas at $20, $30, $40 a barrel, and we were still making a profit. So if the price of oil is $70 a barrel and Russia sells it to India in rubles to get around the situation for $50 a barrel, India makes out and Russia still has income coming in. And so he's still making. Goes beyond cannibalizing 70% of the Russian economy he now controls. Putin Putin's only hope for winning is that Trump will shatter the alliances, unity of alliances, which is strangling Russia's aggression. As House Speaker, the House considers $60 billion in Ukraine aid approved by the Senate. Speaker Mike Johnson need not be imprisoned by his past, similar to how Richard Nixon uses anti-communist credibility to forge a working relationship with communist China. President Biden said the other day, I think it was yesterday, he goes, you know, the $60 billion that we want to give Ukraine is really good for the United States economy and for the American workers. And he said 98%, but this thing, Time says 90% of the Ukraine aid spending stays in the United States, creating thousands of jobs. And you go, wait a minute. We want to give $60 billion to Ukraine to help them, but $54 billion is staying in the United States. So a third grader, you ask that question to, you have 60, but I keep 54. How much do we give you to Ukraine? A third grader would say, we're going to give Ukraine $6 billion. Sounds pretty reasonable, right? 90% of 60 billion is 54 billion. The president says 98%. 98% of 60 billion is a little bit more than 58 billion, so Ukraine would get less than $2, maybe 2 billion. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise in political math. Because remember, I put in right here, supporting Ukraine is in our self-interest. Okay? When it comes to our self-interest, if you thought it was military, you were wrong. You remember I said that most of our politicians are lady of the night who offered their services up to the highest bidder? And the highest bidder are major corporations. And one of the most, that group, one sector that has a powerful group, which they do is, as soon as a lot of senior military officers retire, they go on the board of directors of these military contractors and stuff, and they end up making more there than they ever did in the service. Although some may claim that U.S. aid vanishes in a cesspool of unchecked uranium corruption, one study has revealed that 90% of Ukraine aid dollars are not actually sent to Ukraine after all. Rather, these funds stay in the United States, where leading defense contractors have invested tens of billions of dollars in over 100 new industrial manufacturing facilities, creating thousands of jobs across at least 38 states directly, with vital subcomponents sourced all 50 states. Here it is. This is where the lady of the night offering their services. Hey, I'll support what you want, defense contractor, but I need something in return. Okay, we'll take some. We'll add some. Like for example, okay, Hanson and Shaheen support us, and we'll make sure a couple of manufacturers in Keene, New Hampshire will get defense contracts. And that's how it works. So like it says, 38 states get paid thousands across 38 states directly and with subcomponents sourced from all 50 states. So basically, thousands of jobs over 38 states. Thousands, which means it's under 10,000. So 10,000 over 38 states is not a lot of thing. Virtually all the munitions Ukraine is most reliant upon are fully built in the United States, ranging from the javelins made in Alabama to guided missile launch rocket systems made in West Virginia, Arkansas, and Texas, not forgetting the small ticket items such as night vision gear, medical supplies, small ammunition, all made in the United States. Any additional Ukraine aid would most likely only help the U.S. economy even more, since previous weapons shipments were largely drawdown of musty old stockpiles and existing inventory rather than new supplies. Again, this is where they kind of think we're stupid. Okay. I go in and say, if I have to go to war, I need 10,155 millimeter artillery rounds. Okay? So, but I gave 95 million of those 155 to Ukraine. So I have 5 million left. So, okay, if we say, it says, okay, it's going to cost $6 billion to replace all those rounds. So $6 billion makes 95 billion 155 millimeter artillery rounds. So if we send those artillery rounds to Ukraine, that means we're still short 95 million rounds to our basic needs, our basic security needs. Then the way this goes here, then the way the president looks. So I send 95 million 105 rocket rounds to Ukraine. So I'm not sending Ukraine any money. Those $6 billion for that goes to America's defense contractors. So I have a problem. See, they're saying is, oh, we're not going to spend. So what we're going to do under this is we send $6 billion cash to the Ukrainian government for them to use what they deem necessary. So the other $54 billion, this article, Time Magazine, and the president saying stays in the United States. You know, that is totally disingenuous. That is not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. That is a lie by omission. Okay, is the $56 billion going to be, $54 billion going to be spent in the United States? Okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and I would say yes. Everything from, like it says, bandages, first aid kits, all the tires, you name it, batteries, all of that comes from the United States. So the federal government says, we're going to set out contracts and say, we're buying this $54 billion. Okay? But, wait a minute. Now we get the choice. We spent $45 billion of our own. We gave them $45 billion. We used that equivalent to take most of our spare parts and missiles and all that stuff and send them to Ukraine. Now we have $60 billion, but we're saying is we need $54 billion to send to Ukraine, but we're going to produce the stuff in the United States and send it to Ukraine. So I got a question. Where does the $45 billion come to replace the supplies and equipment we already sent to Ukraine? But again, the additional in the United States, any additional Ukraine aid would likely only help the U.S. economy even more, since previous weapon shipments were largely drawdown of musky old stockpiles and existing inventory rather than new supplies. So, again, what we go in and say, leading defense contractors invest tens of billions in over 100 new industrial manufacturing facilities, creating thousands of jobs. Okay? But then what they're saying is United States really didn't produce the industrial military complex really didn't produce anything for the Ukraine. This is leftover stuff. It could be leftover 155s from Vietnam. So they wiped out all this old stuff. So kind of like going, yeah, we do an accountant, we got rid of the old stuff, now we need the new stuff. So the question is, if I'm a manufacturer, I'm not here for patriotism. I'm not even here for loyalty. I'm here to make the maximum money possible and to increase the stock owner's value. So if I'm getting ready and I'm building these facilities to produce this stuff, I'm hoping that the Ukraine war goes on for a long time because it's a moneymaker. The American people are not going to get upset because Johnny and Susie are not getting killed, and all we're doing is spending tens of billions of dollars. And who knows the difference? People are going to get, who cares? Well, I'm McDonnell Douglas, or I'm Acme Ammo Company, and I'm producing 5.56 rounds, and I'm producing 105 shells. Bingo. Hey, I don't care. Hey, if this war lasts 10 years and I'm getting steady business, I'm happy. And so, and the other thing is, who is telling the truth? Does Time Magazine, Newsweek, I would like to, okay, the news embargo on Ukraine, Russian missile attack on Kiev kills 14 people, wounds 37 children. Ukraine blew up 122 Soviet tanks. This one says over 500,000 Russian soldiers are dead and killed, not counting the wounded, so wounded could be 3 to 4. So what they're really saying is Russia's had 2 to 2.5 million casualties. And it's kind of like Ukraine has no casualties, or it's one of those video games. Every time Ukraine runs out of ammo or casualties, they get casualties, you get killed. Bingo! You press the reset button, you're back to life, and you've got unlimited ammo again. To go and say, in 2 years, Ukraine hasn't suffered significant military losses is bogus. The president of Ukraine wants to draft another 500,000 Ukrainians into. They even have people on the borders to make sure draft eligible young men are not skipping out of the country. So, wrapping it up, we're not getting the truth here. They're playing with the numbers, percentage of bang bang and all this stuff, hoping that people are going to gloss over it and not ask questions. There are a lot of stuff that is disingenuous in these articles. Our politicians are lying to us, and the military complex is making billions. So that's it for today, and that was my rant for today. See you next week.